and welcome to This Week at the Lake, a production of the Lake Monticello Broadcast Group. My name is Ida Swenson, and I am your hostess today. And I am really pleased to have as guests two very hard-working men. Jonathan Pace is a recreation program specialist with the Fluvanna County Parks and Recreation Department. And Walter Hussey is a volunteer master naturalist and master gardener and has been pretty instrumental in some of the changes that you've seen lately at Pleasant Grove. Walter, let's start with you. So how long have you lived in Fluvanna County?
We've lived here, my wife and I, about 2.5 years.
2.5 years. And where did you come from?
We came from Northern Virginia.
And what did you do in your former life?
I retired from NASA, where I was Deputy Chief Engineer at headquarters in Washington.
So pretty much a desk job with your eyes on the stars?
Lots of time being a geek behind a desk and behind a computer, yes.
Cool. So how did you get interested in being a master gardener or a master naturalist?
When we moved down here, we saw the master gardeners over at Pleasant Grove and started talking to them and decided that was really a nice opportunity for us to spend time outdoors, do some fun things together, and use our land that we'd purchased.
And where do you live?
We live we live here in Palmyra, but we live off of Bybee's Church and Ridge Road, over a little east of Palmyra.
Awesome. So how'd you get interested in Pleasant Grove? Because you've spent a lot of time there lately.
We found Pleasant Grove as a large park, a great place to go hike and walk around. And we have 2 dogs, and we could take them there to exercise. And as we started going there, we noticed that a lot of what was happening at Pleasant Grove was around the sports fields and around the history. They just talked about and were actually beginning to do work on the house and restore it. But of all the 800 plus acres, people were not focusing on nature there. And coming from, I guess, D.C. and the city, we found lots of nature there and thought perhaps that someone could help the county focus on nature there. And so the naturalist program was a way for me to learn how to do that. The naturalist program covers everything from animals to plants to meteorology and astronomy and just all of nature. And so that was a great way to have it's a 15-week course, and it was a crash course in learning about nature.
Great. So, Jonathan, how long have you lived in Fluvanna County?
My wife and I moved here in November. We've been married about a year in September. We moved here in November, and we live off Ruriton Lake Road, about 2 miles off 53.
Cool. And where did you grow up?
I grew up in northern Albemarle County, Earlysville to be exact, and I went to Albemarle High School, and I was big into sports and then into recreation in general, and that's what made me become a Parks and Rec specialist.
Awesome. Well, we're certainly glad that to have you in the county. Now, recently there have been some big switch-arounds in the Fluvanna Parks and Rec offices. Could you explain that, please?
Yes, ma'am. Aaron, who's our athletic supervisor, and then myself are still at the community center in Fork Union. But our director, Jason Smith, and Claire Lawande and Melinda Payne have moved to the museum at the old Hayden House.
No, that's a wonderful spot. Now, I confess, I went to go to the Hayden House last weekend or so and had a little trouble getting into the parking lot for the Hayden House. Can you explain the changes in the traffic pattern now?
So instead of using like the main road, that's like the pedestrian road for all the special events we do up there, you must turn left and go down by the horse trail parking and go back, and there's a new parking lot right behind the Hayden House where we want guests to park their vehicles.
So we actually go by the community garden now.
Yes, ma'am.
Which, by the way, thank you for improving that road because it's been difficult to drive on it for a few years. The renovations at the Hayden House look just wonderful. I really enjoyed looking at the displays and seeing all of the ways that you've spruced it up and learning more about Fluvanna's history. And by the way, I recommend to our viewers that if you get a chance, you should stop by and see the Hayden House. It is really, really nice. But there's more going on than just inside the Hayden House now that's been remodeled. So, Walter, I know that you've been spending a lot of time with the Board of Supervisors lately talking about new habitats at Pleasant Grove. What can you tell us about the new habitats?
Once we have decided that there is some work to be done there to enhance the opportunities for people to view nature and the opportunities to have nature present, we want to bring animals and plants that are native here but may not be there right now. For example, a lot of the work we're doing is to bring quail back into the county and back into that particular area so people will have a chance to hear and experience bobwhite quail. In order to do that, you've got to get rid of fescue. Fescue is a common grass in the farmland around here, and of course that had been a farm, and a lot of the pasture areas had been farmed, and so we've got to return that to the native warm season kind of grasses because quail can't get through the clumpiness that fescue provides, and they are basically ground running birds. And so part of all of that was educating the county leadership in the various agencies, but particularly in the Board of Supervisors, who's been very interested in Pleasant Grove and making sure that the money that's spent there, the work that's done there is really going to benefit the citizens and provide them with rich opportunities that over 800 acres can provide. And so we did spend some time with the Board of Supervisors making sure we could both educate them and satisfy their desires and making sure that we're doing the right thing for the citizens in the county.
Well, I was at one of the supervisors' meetings that you appeared at, and I know the supervisors were very concerned because part of this program of establishing new habitats there meant not mowing some of the fields that have been mowed for years and leaving them alone. So what is the process of that? Now we see, of course, that there's plowing along the edges of these unmowed fields, and there are tree tubes along some of them. What's going on there?
The most wildlife-friendly habitat we can find for the most diversity of wildlife is grassy fields that are kind of left alone for 5 to 7 years. If we look back not at the man-made history of the area, but the natural history of the area, a lot of the grassy fields and areas were burned by lightning, by natural wildfires periodically, and that's how they stayed grassy fields. And so the idea is about 5 to 7 years is the time frame. You mow, or with controlled burning, you burn those fields, and they remain in a natural state that our wildlife was used to before we got here, and even sometime after we got here, but before we invented Kentucky 31 and some of the fescue. And by the way, the University of Kentucky even has a huge program to bring quail back because they recognized that when they invented Kentucky 31, what it did to wildlife habitat. So there is a huge program in the state as well to create these type of fields. Department of Game and Inland Fishery, Department of Forestry, about 6 Virginia departments are all helping to contribute to what we're doing because they also realize what's needed around the state and something we have the opportunity to do here in this area. So what we're doing is creating hedgerows. Wildlife like to have cover and then go out in the fields to forage out there, sometimes build nests, raise young, etc., but they always like to come back to cover. So we're building kind of hedgerows, and they're about 15 feet wide, and we're anchoring with trees that are food species trees like oaks that have acorns, hazelnuts, chinkapin, mulberry, different types of trees, and these are all native trees. They're all grown in Virginia. We're getting them from the Department of Forestry, either through grants or donations, and then volunteers are helping to put those in. We had a group of volunteers for this weekend. Next weekend we're going to have another group, and it's going to involve some high school clubs that are going to help us do this and have a stake in returning the area to a true natural state.
And even my 4-H junior naturals, we planted some persimmon seeds along
Great.
one of the hedgerows in hopes that will add to it. So let's look at a map of some of these developed areas, and that hopefully what you just said explains to people the tubes that they see out in the fields now. Those are tree tubes to protect the trees from deer browse, I assume.
Yep, the seedlings that we got from Department of Forestry need time to grow to get to an age where deer and other wildlife can browse on them. We also have moles and voles in the area that like to eat the bottoms of them. So the tubes do all of that protection. And we find that in addition, we find that birds like to nest in them. So one of the things we do, we put in tubes, we have to put netting over the top, because if birds nest in them, they find they can't get out. So we put bird netting over the top. So we're even though we have to put in tubes to protect from deer, we have to protect the birds from the tubes. So it's kind of all about wildlife and what we do to protect the wildlife. And then over time, wildlife itself will help through reseeding. Birds are famous about eating berries off cedars and then dropping the berries with its own self-contained fertilizer along the areas, and they will end up growing up and filling in these hedgerows. And then we were able to get some seeds donated from Department of Game and Inland Fishery of wildlife food, wildflowers. We're going to be sowing those along the area out there, and we hope to have some school children, first graders even, come out on Real Earth Day and help us sow some of those seeds.
So that's something near and dear to both of our hearts, and I know that Parks and Rec is interested in promoting nature education there too. So you want to say more about April 22nd since you just brought it up?
Well, April 22nd is the Real Earth Day, and I happened to talk about this to a group at my church, and a teacher's husband was there, and they got to talking about it, and the teacher went back to school, and they got to talking about it. It turns out that there's standards of learning around nature.
Yes.
There's the opportunity to take the kids from the classroom. And Earth Day itself is not about lectures and PowerPoint and slides. It's about a day-on kind of thing, doing things. And so together we worked out activities like what I talked about, planting some of the trees they'll help us with, some of the wildflower seeds. It's a day on for them to be out in nature participating. It's the Real Earth Day, not the 25th, which is the weekend when a lot of us celebrate, but it's during the week, and they have a chance to experience nature consistent with their standards of learning. So one of the slides that we put together was to show the different areas. We have different areas out there because of the nature of the land, if you will. We have one we're calling a Cottontail Field over near the high school and equestrian parking.
And I think one of your slides is showing on the TV screen right now. So if you want to speak to that at all. So the area on the far left of the slide, as the viewers see it, that's near the high school.
Cottontail Field, we're calling
and
it.
that green area, right? The Cottontail Field. There's a nice trail there, and I think, isn't that where the first graders are going to be
That's where they're going to
some
be
wildflower seeds?
Exactly. And these trails have been designed not to, like a lot of them today, following the hedgerows themselves, but to wind through the fields. We find if you want to see wildlife, you've got to surprise wildlife. They can't see you coming for half a mile, or they'll be gone by the time you get there. So we wind them through the fields where the wildlife are present.
And so all of the areas on your graphic that have the green coloring, those are the new no-mow zones, yes?
That's where it is, and ones we're putting hedgerows around. The one most prominent to Route 53 that you see there is the quail meadow, and it has the most opportunity for us to experience quail coming back into the area. And it has two hedgerows bisecting it as well, so it actually creates 3 wildlife habitat fields within the one itself.
And that will only be mowed or burned every 5 years?
Every 5 to 7 years, we're going to look at the state of the field and the fescue and other, like trees grow up. We don't want trees to start growing in. We want to keep them as grassy fields. We've learned from the state of Virginia that the wildlife folks, the Department of Game and Fisheries, what they're really trying to promote most throughout the state is these untended grassy fields because they're not present.
Yeah.
They have disappeared from Virginia, and it's the kind that has the most diversity. We created a brochure, which is available at the park, It describes all the habitats along the trails, and it notes the most wildlife, diversity of wildlife you'll see is in these habitats.
So the lower right-hand corner of the graphic, there's another green area. That's over by behind the sheriff's department, correct?
Right. We're calling that the Kids and Family Nature Hike Trail because we're anchoring it with another trail that's existing, the Tree Trail, which you had a part, Tree ID Trail, which you had a part with the Girl Scouts.
Yeah, the Girl Scouts and I identified all the trees along a piece of trail that starts behind the library. And there are signs on the trees now, so folks can go along and read a little bit about each tree, not just what the name of it is, but also some things it's good for and curious things about them.
Yeah. And we're, the graphic kind of shows, the second graphic kind of shows the trails that are in there, that trail.
Yeah.
And it includes the Tree Trail, and it includes, as part of the Kids and Family Nature Hike, but also included that we've been talking to the library about in the future using their room, maybe familiar, the room is way behind the circulation desk at the far end, where kids can just play around and run around. We'd like to create a nature aspect of that, kind of a nature discovery room in there.
Oh, that would be awesome.
And so a family could go in there with the kids, a nature discovery room, then walk out back, and we could go through the tree identification trail, and then from it go around through a creek and a little bit of woods, and then back up through this field that we're calling the Kids and Family Nature Hike Field to return back to the library and kind of have an hour or two or an afternoon nature experience there as a family.
Yeah, and by the way, the Girl Scouts made a really nice scavenger hunt that's in the kiosk behind the library at the head of that trail. So if you're taking kids out, pick one up and have fun with the kids. My master naturalist liked it. So anything else about the different things going on? You want help on April 11th, this Saturday, planting trees, or do you think you have enough people to supervise right now?
Well, in planting trees, that's a labor-intensive effort, as
Yes,
you can
it is.
probably imagine. And not only do we plant them, but we put the tree tubes around them and the bird netting, as I
Yes.
talked about, on them. And so we can welcome help. We're going to be out there 9 to 12 doing out at the park in those areas that we talked about, actually putting trees up. We have some tubes out there now for work we did last weekend, but we're going to fill in between those and then areas like down by the sheriff's office, which we didn't do. And we have tomorrow 500 tree seedlings arriving from Department of Forestry. And
Yikes.
so we could use, if you've ever planted trees, we can certainly use help, but we can use help with things like putting the bird netting on and whatnot. I mean, it's not all labor intensive. The grant requires them to be 10 feet apart, so we can use people that can measure 10 feet to help us know where to put things. So we use all sorts. And that's not the last of it. We have to put down mats around those later. The supplier doesn't have them in stock. We'll have in a couple of 3 weeks to keep the grass competition down around the trees. So we'll go back through these approximately 750 trees that we planted and put tree mats, which are just felt, black felt with pins, landscape pins, around each of those. So it doesn't stop on the 11th. We can use help after that.
So I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but I went back through my emails. On March 9th, you sent out a weekly update, and I'll just hit the high points on this. So March 9th, here's what I have as accomplishments this past week at Pleasant Grove. By the way, this is written by Walter. Planted 100 plums and 25 indigo bushes in the quail meadow. Made a project presentation to the Cunningham United Methodist Church. Planted 50 plums and 40 indigo bushes in the Grouse Grassland Wildlife Food Plot. Submitted a revised grant request to DOF for 500 trees and 750 tree tubes.
Which we got.
Yay, what you got. Received a DGIF, Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, grant for 200 trees and ordered seedlings from DOF. Submitted a grant request to Dominion for 2 information kiosks with nature interpretive signage. Did you get that one?
It's still outstanding. They're
Still
not deciding
outstanding.
that until May.
Okay. And then you go into what you have planned for the rest of the week, including finished planting plums. Oh, bluebird houses. We need to go back to that graphic and talk about the bluebird houses. Talk about, so there's the graphic on the screen. The blue stars are the bluebird houses.
We, as we were working out there and talking to folks, particularly in Public Works, they told us that they needed to identify, there's a sewer line from the high school down to the plant along the Rivanna past E.W. Thomas. And so they told us they needed to identify the big manhole covers so they didn't run tractors and mow over them when they did mow those fields. And they had little bitty bamboo stakes to do that. You couldn't even see them above the grass. And so we said, well, what about birdhouses? And they said, good idea. So we contacted the Virginia Bluebird Society and say, what do we have to do? And they say, you got 800 acres, we will talk to you. And so they came out and we talked, and they actually gave us 4 bluebird houses.
Awesome.
So now there is one there as you go in the main road to Pleasant Grove, where a lot of folks park over there for events. There's one right to the field right of that. That's in Quail Meadow. There's one right behind the library at the start of the tree trail. And Cindy at the library has brochures on these, and there are brochures in the Pleasant Grove house as well on these. But
and you have master naturalists monitoring the bluebird
we have a
houses.
citizen science, what's called citizen science. They actually look at the bluebird houses, see what nesting is going on, how many, whatnot. They report that to Virginia Bluebird Society, who reports it to DGIF, who includes it in their bird monitoring database for game and inland fisheries. So we're having a citizen here doing that. And this fall we're going to we're going to put in, I'm into planting trees this week. We're going to put in 15 more bluebird boxes, and I think we're going to do that for the foreseeable future with the land that we have. And we can do that for a couple of 3 years along just the sewer line, but we're going to put them in other areas so that people have a chance to see bluebirds and bluebirds nesting out there. We can build up the bluebird population for the visitors, for the citizens and visitors that visit our park.
Sounds like a win-win-win. Nobody hits the manhole covers, and the bluebirds are happy too. So, Jason, you and I and Walter have been working for months, meeting about another event at Pleasant Grove that be on April 25th, Saturday, April 25th, the second annual Fluvanna County Earth Day. So tell us what you've got planned for Earth Day.
So it's from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and we'll be doing a hazardous waste drop-off, which you can bring out your paints, your solvents, your pesticides, pretty much anything that you have like in a storage shed that is old and you want to get rid of, bring it out. We'll also do a tire drop-off, so old tires without rims. You can bring tractor tires, any size is taken.
Is there a charge for the tires?
It'll be completely free. And you also will have a free prescription drug drop-off. So if you have old drugs in your cabinets, bring them out, and the sheriff's office will be out there to collect those for us. But no fireworks or ammunition. So don't bring anything.
That makes sense, yeah. Oh, that sounds great.
But we'll also have some booths out there from Master Naturalists, Master Gardeners, Rivanna Conservation Society, Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and Lauriston is from Thomas Jefferson Soil and Water. She's going to be doing a rain barrel demonstration at her booth. And we also have the extension office out there as well. So they'll have a ton of stuff out there. Hoping for a really good event. We'll have some kids activities as well, so if you have little ones, bring them out. And SGA is actually doing a 5K mud run that they'll be doing from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Or 10 a.m., sorry, rather. And they'll be out there doing that before our event starts. So if you want to sign up, talk to SGA with Fluvanna County High School.
You better explain what SGA stands for.
Student Government Association, I think it's called. And it's through David Small with Fluvanna County High School. He has a bunch of senior students that organize special events and stuff like that to raise money.
So where does the money go this year?
I think their money is going just back into their school budget for events that they're doing with the school to raise money for things at the school.
Right. I know that last year they donated it to, at least part of it, to the Wounded Warrior Project. So that was good. And I understand we had a few concerns last year about food, so we have food vendors this year.
We had Scott Valentine's with the funnel cakes. This year we are actually not going to do food vendors. The Farm Bureau Women's Committee is not going to do it this year because they just did Easter for us this past weekend. So they won't be out this year, but we'll probably have hamburgers and hot dogs, kind of like what we did last year, and chips. Nothing really heavy, but something light where if you're on the run and have a lot of stuff going on, because I know soccer is happening, baseball is starting to happen. People are busy that week. You can stop in, see some stuff, and grab a quick lunch.
So folks can stop on the way by to the soccer game. They can stop coming or going and take in some of the educational exhibits and maybe grab a bite.
Yes, ma'am. This event is meant for families to get out and also for the community to kind of clean up the county and get rid of some of the waste that we have in our county. And this year will be the last year it's going to be happening until 2017. We'll have to take a year break next year. We won't be doing the hazardous waste drop-off. So if you have stuff that you want to get rid of, we'll still do the Earth Day event with the booths, but we won't do the hazardous waste drop-off or tire drop-off.
So this is the chance.
This is the chance until 2017. So if you have some stuff you don't want to see it for 2 years, bring it out.
Okay, I have to repeat the date because we've had confusion. Saturday, April 25th.
April 25th, Pleasant Grove Park, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. If you come in, you'll see a staff member that will be directing traffic for parking. We'll be right there in the front in a tent for the booths, and we'll have a pathway to lead you to the pollinator garden, where we'll be given a state expert, Carol Heiser. She'll be doing a presentation on pollinating gardening and backyard wildlife.
Mm-hmm.
And also we'll have some master gardeners in the community garden doing some planting demonstrations as well.
So we didn't mention the pollinator garden, but that's near the community garden?
Just on the other side of there's a 4-H shed and a caretaker shed there as you drive into the parking lot for the house, and community gardens on one side, and we're planning a 400 plant pollinator garden on the other side.
Oh, very good, very good. Pollinators are really under stress lately. So I think perhaps there might be some master naturalist-led hikes. Yes, no, maybe? We'll
during
see.
the Earth Day
Right.
event itself, from the 10 to 2 that Jonathan's talking about, in addition to the master gardeners talking at the community garden and some master naturalists and DGIF over at the pollinator garden and master gardeners there too, there will be a short hikes led by master naturalists around the area there. Yes.
I know I'm hoping to lead at least one on the Cottontail Trail.
Good.
Yeah.
And the times for those are, I think, were 11 a.m. and 12, and then 1.
Try to do them on the hour,
On the
right?
hour.
Starting at 11, not at 10 when the event starts, but 11, yeah. Yep.
Sounds great. Anything that we forgot in terms of Earth Day plans?
I think this pretty much covers everything. We hope to have a good turnout, and we collected $17,000 worth of waste last year.
Wow.
And over $3,000 in tires. So we had a really good turnout last year. Hoping to have another great turnout this year. It's a great event. Hope to see a lot of people out there to support it this year.
Well, I hope so too. And it helps that people might know more about it this year too. So, anything else, Walter, about all of the habitat changes at Pleasant Grove?
Well, they will be continuing. There'll be opportunities that people interested either in volunteering or interested in just going out and seeing what's happening and learning about nature out there and what's going on. We have the brochures in the house. We're going to have different events out there like Earth Day and talking about the pollinator garden and the hikes. And we intend to have some more as time goes on in the future. But if you're interested in working, volunteering, or learning more about nature, stop by the house, talk to the folks at the house, and let us know who you are, and we'll be glad to get in touch with you.
Sounds wonderful. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming and talking with us today. I hope we get a lot of people from here at the lake that take an active interest in what's going on at Pleasant Grove and start gathering their hazardous wastes for the Earth Day time. And so that's our time for this week and this week at the lake. Thank you for watching us and ask you to continue watching us. And if you see a member of the Lake Monticello Broadcasting Group, give them a big thank you for all of the hard work those volunteers put into this too. I'm still Ida Swenson, and my guests today have been Jonathan Pace of Fluvanna County Parks and Rec and Walter Hussey, Master Gardener and Master Naturalist volunteer. Thanks so much. I hope you have a great week.